Welcome to another episode of the Steal a Moment podcast with me, Mike Lebois. Today's guest is one of my very good friends. Yeah, it's great. One of my best friends, Davey Bartlett of the Campfire Vandetta of 90% 90s for you Denver folks. We get pretty personal in this episode. Talk a lot about the new Campfire Vandetta record, Volume 3, which is, as Davey describes it, one of the most personal records he's ever written, and the end of an era of the Campfire Vandetta. We talked about different stories of some of the different songs from the record. We also talk about what's like transitioning to. We talk about what it's like with the transition to Nashville and how the music scene there is significantly different than Colorado. We have, it's a fun conversation, but at the same time, Davey tells some pretty heavy stories, some truths. We talk about some things that Davey hasn't really discussed in public all that much, and kind of opens the air up to what some of the songs mean on Campfire Vandetta Volume 3. And also, we get into the true story behind Campfire Vandetta's probably most popular song, Adams County. It's a fantastic song. They re-release it here on this record as part of Volume 3, and it feels really good. Volume 3 itself releases this Sunday, December 20th, on every platform, and get excited, folks, because it's fantastic. I got a quick early preview. Thank you to Benormous Studios and Van Hoven for hooking me up with a chance to catch that a little bit early. You guys have been fantastic, and it was wonderful to listen to it. On the goal note for us here at Steal a Moment on YouTube, at least, we are now up to 48 subscribers. I put a little call out to the audience, my Facebook group and everything, and asked the people there to, if you haven't yet and you are interested in checking out the show, to please like, comment, and subscribe. We are two away with 2 episodes left before the before the January 1st deadline. So guys, get on that. I'm so excited and ready to hit a milestone and then build from there. If I learned anything from one of another Davey Bartlett friend, like group of people, I guess, Tyler Stanfield is setting goals and trying to achieve those goals in any means possible, and working towards starting with a smaller goal and working towards a larger goal. The only roadblocks we put in front of ourselves sometimes are imposed by ourselves. So we have to work to do that as well. To all new audience members and new listeners, hello. Thank you for joining the show, and we hope that you enjoy it as much. I hope you enjoy it as much as the others who are regulars here. We appreciate it, and hopefully can do anything we can to improve the show. Please let me know. My email's always open. My Facebook, my comment section is always open. It's been an incredible year so far for the Steal a Moment podcast, and we've only been around since August. I've taken advantage of this time from being at home and not necessarily having the freedom to do the things I would like to do things that I want to do, and sort of develop a system and a way of thinking and really processing how to make this show better and things I'm doing to improve it day after day. If you haven't yet, go ahead and head over to Gunpowder Empire's YouTube page. We have for you guys the video for Through Bloodshot Eyes. We will also have official audio for our new song, Evil Within, coming very, very soon. Evil Within just hit master this last week. We got our final cut, and I think we have a winner. We're really proud of this track. We're super excited. Sean's got some nasty solo work on this one, and it's a pretty interesting story within the song as well. We're hoping to have a video shot for it sometime in early 2021, when things are a little bit more stable for us. If you guys haven't seen the video for Through Bloodshot Eyes yet, again, thank you to Travis Owen and Scott Ewell for all the work they've done for us. My YouTube channel of the week is a smaller channel, but a very good friend of mine. Corinne Ripley has a channel called Posichick. She is starting to put out more content here over the last few weeks. If you guys like gaming, digestible videos of gamers who are just trying to do their best, as she would say. Right now, she's on a Fall Guys series, and she's also done a Superliminal run a couple of weeks ago, but they are all fantastic, and we're going to try and build her channel. So if you guys are interested in gaming channels at all, please head over to her channel. The link will be in the description below. With that being said, Davey B and I would like to steal a moment.
There we go.
Am I in now?
Yeah.
Hey, I can hear you.
I can hear you. Yes, we are on the road on the Z. Is that a Marvel sweatshirt?
Yeah, dude. You not seen this hoodie before? This hoodie's tits. Check this out. It's like just bad guys, but it's not all like some are X-Men, some are Spider-Man. It's some are Fantastic Four. It's kind of all over the place. I love this hoodie.
That's really cool, man. I dig it. Glad we could get in. Sorry, sometimes, like I said, sometimes the audio decides like it just doesn't want to be a thing.
All good, my friend.
But yeah, dude, I'm already recording, just so you know. It's really laid back. I generally just kind of keep it real easy, real simple. So it's never.
Yeah, I watched Tyler's episode. I loved it. I ended up watching the whole thing.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, he's an interesting dude. I love Tyler. He's a good guy.
I'm very much looking forward to making fun of him for thinking that Yingling is a new and exciting beer.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because you're a masshole. I always forget that for some reason. I don't know why, with all your New England allegiances.
I was like, really? Did he just come out here and tell everyone that like Yingling was awesome? Not awesome.
No, it's the bottom tier of beers out there, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I got some fancy ass beer that I'm drinking, so yeah, I'll poke fun at Tyler real quick.
There you go. It's always good, man. But it's really good to see you. I feel like I haven't seen you in like a year, maybe.
Right?
Since
Jeez,
you
man.
moved yeah, maybe longer.
Well, I saw you guys when I was out. Well, I thought it was this summer when I saw you guys play at Moe's.
Yeah, that was end of last year then. So yeah, it's been
Was it that long ago already?
Yeah, man, because we've only played one show this year, and it was at Trailside with Zach. It was a stream show because we could only have like 30 people there.
Okay.
This year's been nuts, man. It's been it's been one. Let's put it that way. But it's good to see you, man. How you been? How's Tennessee life? How's future fathering feeling?
It's been good. Tennessee's good, man. I dig it for the most part. Getting excited about Baby B Townie's on the way.
That's crazy.
It's pretty wild, man. We're kind of a lot of our time is dedicated these days to kind of getting set up and prepared, and we're doing a home birth actually. So that's a little unique. Most folks go to the hospital like you do, and I assumed we would do the same thing, but Cassie had a really strong opinion about it, and it's her body. Whatever she wanted to do, I was going to get behind it, and we ended up watching some documentaries and some interesting stuff, and at first I was kind of like, "Are you sure that doesn't seem like a really good idea? Maybe there should be some doctors around." But the more I learned about it, I was like, like maybe we should have this at the house. This actually makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, we were preparing to welcome B Tiny to the world in early January. So we're excited.
Nice, man. I'm excited too. I know that everybody back here who knows you very well and who've been friends for a long time. We're all really excited for you guys as well. So definitely going to be fun to see you as a dad and see Cassie as a mom. It's gonna be a fun change of the world for the rest of us.
Yes.
Since we can't get one from Scott and Danielle, we might as well get one from Davey and Cassie.
Yeah.
Scott, I'm
Tony's still having babies too. I mean, he's got a little one right now.
God, that's right, little Z, who's walking already. And
Tony became a dad again while becoming a grandfather in the same calendar year.
Yeah, that dude's got more skills. I don't know. You 90% 90s guys have more talent in every field of life than I could ever imagine. But the other part of it is anybody who knows Davey on the social media side of things has known him as the dad joke guy. So he was already prepared before we were even prepared for you to have a kid. So
yes, years of preparation, joke-wise, went into the creation of this baby, no doubt.
Yes. So I was going back through our history a little bit just to kind of get a gauge of how long we've known each other. So the ballpark estimate I have right now is about 10 years because of the Best Band in Denver contest with Novus Folium and Wild Angels. I believe Nemesis was there, speaking of Tony.
Yep.
No One Left Standing. It was a crazy group of bands that were there in 2010. And Novus took the reign as the best band in Denver, despite everybody's efforts to not make that a thing. Clown kind of tricked everybody, which was the most amazing part of that night for us being there. But yeah, so we've known each other a long time, but you and I have really gotten close over the last couple of years through sports, through just music and life, man, like just being cool like that. But you have a new record coming out here soon with Campfire Vandetta. It's the end of the trilogy, man. This one, I listened to it again today. I had my girlfriend listen to a couple of tracks. This one's heavy, man. It's got some moments in it. Tell me a little bit about the composition of this one and what kind of brought it out.
So to recap, Campfire Vandetta started as kind of a landing spot for all these leftover songs I'd had after my high school band, if you could believe it or not. I graduated high school back in 2001. And at the time I was playing in a three-piece, pop punk power trio kind of thing. And, towards the tail end, I was still accumulating songs and just had nothing to do with them. And then, I moved back and forth between Colorado and Massachusetts for quite some time. And it was eventually in discussions with one of my buddies about coming back to Colorado to launch this band. And we didn't know what we were going to call it. And we went back and forth on names and name ideas. And we both really liked Vendetta. And we both really liked Campfire. And eventually we were like, let's just go with Campfire Vandetta. That's pretty cool. That sounds rad. And we did that. And as soon as I got to Colorado, this would have been like 2009. I said, okay, well, I want to go ahead and, record all this backlog stuff that I've been writing since 2001. And, my buddy didn't really want to do that. We had a couple new songs that were very different and like darker and a little heavier. And he wanted to kind of roll with that and write and do all these things. And I was like, well, yeah, but I want to play shows like immediately and like, here's the material and like, let's just backlog this stuff and get it out there. And so we kind of immediately had a stoppage in the progress. And so I moved into a house with Van and Aaron, Novus Folium members, and was recording with Van. And we were probably we recorded about 80 or 90% of Campfire Vandetta Volume 1. And then I joined Novus Volume, and I've totally shelved the entire thing. The only way it came up was in the context of when Novus was on tour. Sometimes, these venues in a hole-in-the-wall venue in Illinois would be like, yeah, we have you guys booked for a 3.5-hour set. And it was like, okay, that's a terrible idea. So, Campfire was the sacrificial lamb, where we would go up and play for an hour and a half or something and try and buy time for ourselves. So we'd open for ourselves kind of thing. But, long story short, Campfire Vandetta Volume 1 didn't end up getting released until 2011. And then Campfire Vandetta Volume 2 we put out in 2012, immediately after the Novus breakup. And ever since then, I've been like, yeah, someday we'll do, someday Campfire 3, we're going to finish this trilogy. Because in the very, very beginning, it was like, look, we're going to do 3 records this way. And then there was even a subplot of, eventually I'd like to go electric and have the band come back and circle back through the material and do electric versions of the songs, because it's an acoustic band. But at some point I got tired of waiting on it, and I got too excited about the electric version. We launched the electric version before the 3rd record was ever even finished. And then it really wasn't until the pregnancy announcement, to tell you the truth, that really kicked my butt into gear. And it was like, I better finish that record. I mean, I'd been working on it for a long time. I mean, we first started tracking things in 2017, and those songs were recorded years prior to that. So finally, I was like, all right, Van, now's the time. Like, I have time. No one's doing anything. He was out of work, or not out of work, but at one point he broke his foot and was on the shelf for a while. And
right, I remember that.
Pandemic stuff was going on. It was easy for me to get out to Denver and just work for a few days, and we put in the work like really, really aggressively. So we finally got Campfire 3 done. It's kind of our version of like Chinese democracy. Like, you've been waiting a really, really long time for this record, but it's finally here.
Yeah, man. And the great thing about it is, like, if you listen closely, it tells a really interesting story. And I definitely am a huge fan of what I've heard from it so far. You gave me a nice little preview. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Van, as well, for throwing that together really quick. But you and I were talking about it last night, that it kind of tells the story of some of the heavier portions of that post-Novus lifetime, where you were kind of floating around, and I mean, you were in Lost Point for a little while. You were, everybody came out to see you, but, it sounds like there was a little bit going on behind the scenes as well. Oh, that does look like a fancy beer. That looks like a very rich, fancy beer.
This is a barrel-aged sour straight from Belgium. It's petite, and it's unbelievably delicious.
This is a disgusting 0 calorie, 0 anything Mountain Dew made in Texas.
See, if you give it like a European name, it's the Dew de la Montagne.
Cerro. But back to not making fun of Tyler. You and I were talking about this yesterday, that it kind of goes into a little bit more. It's one of the more personal records you've written. I can attest to this as well as a musician. Like, I've finally reached that fuck it point where I don't need to write something to pander to an audience. I want to write what I want to fucking write. And when Sean and I started Gunpowder Empire, we were originally just starting an acoustic project, and we were only going to do like, a couple of songs, release a few EPs, just kind of have fun with it, see what happened. And when we were in the studio, we were like, this is too good to not make it bigger. And so we brought in Alex to drum. We had a guitar player for a little while who unfortunately didn't work out creatively. He's doing his own thing now, and I'm stoked for him, and I hope everything works out on that end, And but we released Through Bloodshot Eyes a couple weeks ago, and we released the video yesterday as of this recording, and that's been awesome to see the response. I think just under 24 hours we have 100 views, which to me is awesome, because I mean, we don't have that big of a following because we started right at the beginning of the pandemic, essentially.
Right.
And so we haven't really been able to really progress and push the sound as much as we want to and everything. But the 3 songs that I love the most are the 3 most personal songs I've written ever in my history of writing music and lyrics. So I can generally attest and respect that feel from this record a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because my mom was out here in Tennessee a couple weeks ago, and I was like, Mom, my new record is like, it's on the doorstep. It's getting mastered now. It's on the home stretch. And do you want to check it out? Can I play a couple songs for you? And of course, she's on board. And I played the first 2 songs, and she was like, "Stop." Stop. She was like, "Are you okay?" Because it's heavy. It's emotional. And I was like, oh yeah, Mom. I mean, I write about these things, years after the fact, generally. Again, Campfire 1 came out in 2011. Most of the songs were written in 2000 or 2001. I mean, there's a lot of gap. Or some of these songs were written in 2005, and they were about 2001 situation. So with Campfire 3, it starts off with an incredibly personal track called When a Bad Man Takes the Stage. And it's basically just a super scathing self-judgment, really. In 2012, I was not in a good place when I wrote that song, and I was engaged in a lot of bad stuff. And it was just a tough time in that post-Novus breakup, as you alluded to. I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is just exactly how kind of broken I was at that point in time. To give everyone an idea, and there's some details that I'm about to share now that might shock some people, might upset some people, and so be it. I've made my peace with it. But so in 2012, prior to the final Novus tour in the spring, the band was, hanging together by a thread. It was very tense. Yet at the same time, we were seeing the most success commercially that we'd ever had. I mean, we were playing all the biggest shows. We were one of the hottest tickets in Denver. We're doing our little small independent tours and that kind of thing. But behind the scenes, things couldn't have been much more toxic. And, I was in this band with 2 of my best friends in Aaron and John. And behind the scenes, I was also dating this girl who was the singer of her own band. And I lived in an apartment that was split between myself, her, Aaron, and his girlfriend. We all lived together. And it was like, a half a mile from the Novus band house. And basically, I fell off the wagon. I'd been largely sober during the Novus era, which a lot of people also didn't know. But I fell off kind of hard. And I started seeing another woman behind the scenes, and I was keeping that from the band. And of course, the girlfriend at the time. And the drinking really kind of opened my eyes to, I was no longer interested in being the glue man for Novus, which was very difficult. I had kind of largely been the glue for that band, which was a very fractured band in the first place, as there was just a lot of internal problems. But, I was constantly there to patch things up and if John came in and said something really super obnoxious to the band, after he left, I could kind of massage what he said and kind of get the band guys on board. And there was a lot of that went on a daily basis. When I finally fell off the wagon, it was like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I didn't want to be John's lackey anymore. And at the same time, I was still aggravated with Aaron, who we kind of dragged kicking and screaming through our success, who was also one of my good friends. And then basically I was given some information that, you know, his girlfriend had not been all that faithful on our previous tour. And I purposely kept that information from Aaron because I was worried about what it was going to do to the band and our living situation and all these things. It was incredibly selfish. You know, yeah, I didn't want to hurt Aaron, but as a friend, what you do is you give them the bad news, and you're just honest about it. And I wasn't. So when that tour happened, oh, it gets a little deeper. And by little, I mean a lot. So my behind the scenes other girl and I became pregnant while I was dating someone else. And, you know, I was still and it was kind of like, what are we going to do? And, you know, for reasons, you know, I can only be so forthright about, we ultimately terminated the pregnancy. This woman that I was having this like affair with, I don't know if it counts as an affair, if it's just your girlfriend and not a wife, but is now my wife. So it worked out, you know, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And I love her very much, and I've been behaving myself, you know. But we went through a very tough decision with that to do what we did. And this all happened within that information came out within like the week of us leaving on a pretty significant tour for us. So on the road, you know, the band had a brutal breakup, and part of it was stemmed from me telling Aaron the information that I'd been withholding from him until that time, after we were like beyond obliterated on the road at some stop. And so when we came home from that tour, the broken tour where we left in different vehicles, some of us, like, my band was gone. I broke up with the girlfriend the day before the tour. So no girlfriend, no band. Because my living situation was there and with her and with Aaron, I moved out. And so I had nowhere to live. No band, no girlfriend, no best friend, who was furious with me, and rightfully so. My other best friend hated my guts as well, in the form of John. I had quit my job before we left because I was convinced that we were about to hit the road and be rock stars, you know, like, so. I literally returned to Denver with everything I owned in a duffel bag, and it was like, wow, okay, cool. So I'm an addict again. Everybody hates me. I just terminated a pregnancy. My band and my dreams and everything I poured my future into is over. Like, it was an all-time low. Like, it was a stunning, like, bounced off the bottom kind of feel. And
yeah, man. Whew.
That's when that song was written. And the song is called When a Bad Man Takes the Stage. And it's just basically this brutal self-review of who I was. And it was so brutal, I didn't even share it with the band. It was strictly therapy. It was just for me. I wasn't even comfortable sharing it with them. And, you know, when things got kicked into gear to finish Campfire 3, I kind of re-examined some old material, and I was like, holy shit, this song, like, this is rough, but this is appropriate. You know, there's a lot of guilt in Campfire 3. There's a lot of shame. But this was therapeutic for me, and yet I needed to have it, you know? So it's heavy. It's going to be hard for people to hear in that sense. And yet it's all done to like a fairly like upbeat pop punk background.
Yeah, totally.
That's why I said my mother made it through 2 songs, and she was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yes, this is a long time ago. You know, a lot has changed, but yeah, it's heavy, man. Like, it's not sonically heavy. It's not metal. It's not aggressive like that. It's still a good old acoustic pop punk folk campfire, whatever we are. But conceptually and like some of the subject matter, like, yeah, it's dark and it's heavy at times. But it needed to be said and it needed to be out there.
And I completely agree. That is something I think that we as musicians can do, because I guarantee you, when a bad man takes the stage, is going to relate to somebody who's kind of probably been in or is in that same situation, or in a situation similar to that, where they have something like that holding, deep inside of them. And, it's a difficult situation. And, what's crazy about that whole story is that those relationships in some capacities can probably be repaired over time, and you guys can look back on that as a growing moment for all of you. Like you said, bouncing off rock bottom, man, that's the lowest of low points for anybody. You literally were like you said, no band, no girlfriend, no home, really. You had no stability, but yet you've found a way to climb back to a position of stability, to where you have made this name for yourself, at least here in Colorado, as everybody's go-to guy, that guy that we can all rely on. I have always known you as that guy. Like, I will be blatantly honest when I say that one of my favorite moments was when you reached out to me about joining the Colorado Media School, and what I thought about it and how I felt about it. And, and then having that opportunity to pass on a chance for you to work with me in the broadcast booth, because I knew that I could trust you, rely on you, and you would show up when you could, unless you had gigs or events, the things that we run into all the time as musicians. It's just the way it is. But, to kind of tell my own version of that story. So, I lost my brother to suicide. It'll be 11 years ago next month. And at the time, I thought I was dealing with it well. Everybody thinks you're dealing with things well when you're in the worst possible position. But I was literally not. I was not handling it at all, to the point where I got kicked out of Wild Angels. They literally said that they could not handle me talking about him every time we did an interview, or bringing it up every time I was on stage, or, it was so ingrained in my character at the time that I could not talk about it. And they were given an ultimatum. It was either I go or the funding of the band goes. And so at the time, I just lost my girlfriend because I had completely emotionally shut down, and she left me. And so no band, no girlfriend. And I was dealing with the loss of a family member. So my family was no support system. It was there, but it wasn't there, if it makes sense. Like, everybody was dealing with their own shit. And so Sean's my best friend. Like, we've been friends for 20 fucking years. We went to grade school together. First major projects were together, all of that shit. We patched things up over time. And originally we wrote a song after my grandfather passed away called Least Resistance. And we kind of wrote it in like 10 minutes. It was really powerful, but it was an amazing song. And we have only ever played it live once, and that was the show the night after my brother's memorial. So my brother's memorial was on a night that we had a show. And all of his friends came, like all of my brother's friends came. There's like 300 people at the Toad Tavern, if you can imagine how full that place was that night. Yeah. And so as we were writing the acoustic record for Gunpowder, which is called This Time with Feeling, pick it up if you guys want to. It's fine. A little promo. Sean was like, we should do an official recorded version of Least Resistance. We'd never done it. So we actually went through and I found a song that I had written called Ode to the Reaper that I had written about my brother. And we took lyrics from that. We took lyrics from the original Least Resistance. And the amount of relief that came out in the booth as I was singing there's a really intense breakdown part where we actually had to stop recording so I could stop crying and like settle myself down. I'm getting a little misty eyed just thinking about it right now. But what was interesting about that was it was cathartic. It kind of gave me that release, that sense of like, okay, it's been 10 years, but that song gave me like knowing that could be written, knowing that was there, gave me the confidence and release to know that I can move forward from that. And knowing that was my lowest low, like the depression and the pain that I felt in that time frame of like that first year of not having him there and everything, is like the amount of relief, I guess, that kind of comes from releasing that demon into public hearing, and the amount of responses I get from people who hear that song and say, I can relate to that pain, or that song makes me feel things.
Yeah.
That's something I think we as musicians, and especially as writers, we strive to do, because what's the fucking point of writing a song that nobody gives a shit about except for it makes my butt move? Like, those songs are fun, but writing something that means something from here and then other people can relate to, man, that's awesome. Like, I don't know. I can't think of anything else that feels that good, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, what's the veil for? Like, at some point, you kind of ditch the metaphors and all the secrecy and just like let them have it. What is the song really about? Like, just pour it out there, just see what's up. So I mean, I hope it was kind of funny because my mom actually touched on that too. She's like, so do you ever like tell them, them as in your audience, like, do you ever tell them like you got through it and this is how you did it and you sing about that? And I was like, no, it's mostly just the bad part of the story. But yeah, of course, I hope somebody can listen and go like, and take it home and do something positive with it. I mean, for me to go through something so brutal like that and turn it into a song that like I actually really enjoy and I'm happy to play for people, that was the win, and I will tell my son the same thing. Like, the bad things that happen to you, like, it's up to you to try and turn this into a positive some way or another. And for me, I could take pain that I had felt in any number of situations and turn it into a 3-minute ditty that made me and a lot of other people really happy. And that to me was always a win. Like that's the most positive coping strategy I've ever had. And I've had some bad ones.
Haven't we all?
Like, a positive one like that it was such a huge win for me. So like, so yeah, unfortunately for the listener, no, they don't get the happy ending to the story of like, and then everything worked out. I don't have any songs like that. But they do. It works out for me in the form of I wrote the song and I finished it, and like, and I love getting that out there and having that big release, and that is the victory of it, and that is the happy ending.
Definitely. There's another song that makes a reappearance in Campfire Vandetta Volume 3 that everybody loves. Everybody sings along every time I've heard you sing it and play it. And by all means, I am a fan of, and I just played it for my girlfriend a little bit ago. Fuck you, Adams County. You said there's a story behind that song as well that's not quite what people think it is.
Well, yeah. Okay. So Adams County. Oh man.
Great song.
Oh, the story, the real story as to what occurred is it was a doubleheader day for me, which wasn't uncommon for me in that time period. This was like 2014. So by that time, I was already in Lost Point. I was already in 90% 90s. And I was doing it wasn't uncommon for me to play 2 or 3 shows on a Saturday or a Friday, because either, 90s had multiple shows, or I had a show with one band and then I was going to go play another show with a different band. That was fairly common. And
yeah, if you don't know, the Denver music scene is super incestual. We all have played with each other at some point or another.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, that used to just be a thing for like drummers, because drummers used to be hard to find. And like, so every drummer was in like 4 or 5 bands. But now, if you are just like really out there, you can be in so many bands.
Yep.
I wish I could tell you I was the first, but I wasn't. But it wasn't long after me that all of a sudden Scott was in a ton of bands, Jace was in a ton of bands. Like all of a sudden it became more popular to be numerous projects. But I was in 6 bands in the year 2013.
Yeah.
Ridiculously busy. And 2014 came along, and I knew that this one particular day was going to be kind of a crazy day. 90% 90s had like a late afternoon, early evening show at a gay bar. Our first ever show at a gay bar. And I was like, this is going to be lit. This is going to be nuts. We're going to this bar to play Britney Spears covers. Like, people are going to lose their mind. Like, this is going to be nuts.
Anthony doing Spice Girls.
Yeah, of course. Like, this is going to be nuts. And of course, I used to drink a lot at the shows. And the second show that I had that on tap that day was Lost Point with Lola Black and others at Summit Music Hall. So I knew that this was going to be like just a bonkers evening, and so the irony is I actually went out of my way to get a designated driver for the night. And that was our mutual friend, April. April.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So April went to both shows, and she took me from the first one to the second one. And I was actually good and deep into the Lost Point set. And we had a great night. We had a great show at X Bar with 90% 90s. That's the bar we were at. Mm-hmm. And, then we went to Summit Music Hall, and Lost Point was killing it over at Summit. We were on the side stage because we were like the headliners of the small stage thing. It was a 2-stage deal. So
was it that beach party show?
Say it again.
The beach party show? Was that one of those?
I don't know if it was a beach party thing, but it was.
Yeah. Was it like the Lola Black show? Yeah, the Moon Room.
The Moon Room stage. We were headlining that stage, and Lola Black was headlining the main stage. Mm-hmm. And at some point, Tyler got on the microphone towards the end of our set and was like, "Yo, get us shots." Well, all of a sudden, 3 people emerged with a round of shots. Now, there's 5 people in Lost Point, mm-hmm. and 3 people emerged with rounds of shots. This is some algebra for you guys at home. A train leaves Cleveland at 3:30, traveling 70 miles an hour. So all of a sudden, 15 shots arrived to the stage. And Jace at the time wasn't drinking and said, "Nope, I'm out." And Brennan said, "You know what? I'll pass." And so we went to give some shots to Beef, and he went, "Nah, I'm good." And so Tyler and I consumed 15 shots in about a minute and a half.
Oh!
Between the 2 of us.
Yikes.
So, which is a profoundly stupid thing to do. But that's what happened. And we finished the set, and I was so chock full of adrenaline, like there was no response body-wise. So like I felt exactly the same as I did before. And we were out in the parking lot, and packed up our gear and that kind of thing. And, somebody brought up the idea of going out for breakfast or something like that, because by now it's, almost midnight.
Right.
April wanted to eat, and I was like, you know what? I'm good. I just want to go home. And she was like, you sure? And I was like, yeah, I think, you know what? I'm good. I'm good to drive. I'm fine. and I was at the moment, the adrenaline flowing through me. And yeah, halfway home, it finally, when my adrenaline stopped, it was like, oh, I've made a terrible decision. It was like, well, you should just get home. And I got arrested, and I got a DUI charge, which I should have got. But the song, it's called Adams County, and the big tagline, like that you said, is "Fuck you, Adams County." But I'm not upset with those guys for doing what their job is. Like,
right.
I was a legit danger to the community and the people around me, and like, yeah, they definitely should have taken me off the road. Like, I'm not upset with them at all. Like, being a police officer is really, really hard. Like, I know there's been a lot of attention brought to it this year in the wake of some of, like, the racial violence kind of stuff that goes on. And like, I can never get behind that. And I'm not a Blue Lives guy at all. But I think that the job that they perform is incredibly difficult. I'm not a defund the police guy. I think if anything, those guys should be paid more and trained better, and keep them cameras on all the time. Everything's documented, so it's a learning process, and everything's above board. Like, it's a really hard gig.
Yep.
So, but the song, and it's nobody's fault but my own, because I wrote it, gives the impression that I'm like mad at the police that they caught me. That's not how I feel about it. I have a lot of problems with the system of how it all went down, because it's like, it's very rare that a crime is preventable, like, generally speaking. But part of my punishment for that particular crime was they put a device in my car. Some of you are familiar with it, and it's basically like a breathalyzer that's attached to the ignition system of your vehicle. And for a year and a half, my car would not physically operate unless I blew zeros into this vehicle, and then it would allow you to operate the car. And so what I started getting irritated with was like, well, wait a minute, this technology exists. Why would you ever let anyone die over this when you have the ability to stop it completely? Like, you could completely eradicate drunk driving in its entirety, but they choose not to. And, like, the first thing I think about is like my freedoms crowd, like,
yeah.
Keep in mind, this is the same, 50 years ago, Mikey, people were sending Ralph Nader death threats because he wanted to put a seatbelt in their car.
Right.
And they were like, my freedoms, I need to be able to have the ability to fly through the windshield at 70 miles an hour.
Yep.
And today it's laughable. Today we go, can you believe these idiots drove around without seatbelts, and actively fought against having them. I'm a big believer that 50 years into the future, either we're going to have the cars that drive themselves, like, you don't need the human driver, and you take that element out. But it also wouldn't shock me to think that every vehicle should have that device. Like, and someday they will look back at our generation and go, can you believe that they let these idiots, like, have the ability to be really, really intoxicated and still operate 2,000 pounds of steel
that can go 100 miles an hour. Yeah.
Right. So, look, I want to make this super clear, because, like, what I did was super stupid. It was wildly irresponsible. I'm not mad at the police who stopped me from doing it. I'm happy they did before something terrible happened, like that I really hurt someone or myself, or even just damaged property. Like,
right.
But this crime is, like, entirely preventable. And yet they can't wait to shame you. And here's the other thing. It's a lot like speeding. It's one of these things that everybody's kind of doing it. And then if you do it too much, well, you're terrible. Like, we're all driving 5 to 10 miles over the speed limit. It's illegal for all of us.
Oh yeah.
But the guy who's going 15 over, he gets pulled over and gets the big ticket, and it's like, well, he's a bad guy. Like he was out of control. It's like, and that, that in itself is a preventable crime. I mean, we all have, anyone who's a nut job like myself as a teenager has found the governor on their car. When you hit 115 and your car just went boom and powered down.
Yeah.
They could set that to 75. They could prevent speeding too.
They do that in sprinters and certain other vehicles that are commercial vehicles. Our sprinter, when I was in Red Tide, the sprinter that we drove in Canada and on the Seven Dust tour, had a governor on it. We couldn't go over, I think, 75 miles per hour. So yeah, the technology's there.
You have it. It's available to you. I understand like the whole freedom argument to some extent, but and what really stands behind it though is that it would be devastatingly crippling to the restaurant industry, to the bar industry, which is a huge source of commerce. Mm-hmm. So I get why it doesn't happen. But I did not appreciate being as shamed as hard as I was, while also being like, we choose not to stop this. We would rather just have you feel terrible about it, give us $14,000 and then go about your life. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't leave there less of a threat to anyone. I'm still, and there's nothing that would stop me from doing it now. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It was, unfortunately, that last paragraph I just gave you didn't fit in the 6-syllable space I left myself, where it was very convenient to just go, fuck you, Adams County. So yeah, that's what I said. But it's my own fault for, I've received some backlash here and there about like, you're breaking the law. Yeah, it was. Again, I can't reiterate that strongly enough, but there are problems with the system. The more prominent line that more folks should have attached themselves to than "fuck you, Adams County" was the line in the second verse of, and yet you have the method, yet you have the answer, the method and device, but the revenue is worth more than life.
Yep.
Don't tell me that it's a terrible, terrible crime if you're willing to let X amount of people die every year so that you can generate that money off the offender. Like, do you want to fix it? Then fix it. Put that machine in every vehicle. And like I said, 50 years from now, everyone will go, can you believe that they used to let people drive drunk? Like,
yeah, dude.
But who knows?
It's
a far-fetched idea. No, a lot of people don't like it. The idea that I think that they should all have, every vehicle should have that. But, hey, someday, if I end up being the Ralph Nader of the future, I'll take that.
Yeah, I didn't even think about either of those until you brought that up. That's a brilliant point. I might have to think about that a little bit harder after this. That's an interesting idea.
Not to harp on this thing, and I know we've already talked about it for several minutes, but by the way, once my sentence was over, I called the company, because you have to return the device. They detach it from the vehicle.
Right.
And I asked them if I could purchase it and keep it in my car permanently, and they said no.
Wow.
They refused to give it to me. And then they actually, part of what they told me was, well, there's no price point for it. And I said, name your price. And I said, well, that's funny, because then I went back to the paperwork and it says if you damage or destroy the unit,
it costs
$1,500.
Yeah. So there you go. There's your price point.
Like, well, I'll give you $1,500. I'm like, you'll be saving my and maybe somebody else's life. Like, can I have it and just keep it? And they said no. Oh. So, that was upsetting. But
interesting.
Woosa.
Goose drama. So just to change gears a little bit, because I talk about multiple subjects and everything we've talked about has been amazing so far, and it's all staying in. This may just be a long episode. We might call it at that. So you and I also bonded not only over music, but we're one of the rarer breeds in our genre that we are both music and sports fans, and not just niche sports fans, like sports fans. You and I have been to an Avs game together. We went to Avs Bruins game right before you guys. That's when you told me you were moving to Tennessee, which was crazy. But you are a diehard Boston sports fan. And right now, it's looking like the era is over finally for Boston sports. As a Denver fan, thank fucking God. No offense to you. But how has it been in like the transition period now where the Red Sox seem to be on the rebuild? The Patriots are about to go into full rebuild probably after this year. What does it feel like? Does this year feel different? Not just because of COVID, obviously it's different in that sense. But as like a Boston sports fan, does it feel different right now?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I actually think the city got really lucky in terms of COVID because like Boston's a very, very difficult place to play and a difficult place to operate. Like they just don't accept mediocrity. But for a century, you know, all of our teams were good, not great, you know, like, so folks were kind of okay with that to some extent. I mean, like, you were always banging on the local team, but you also knew that you had it better than a lot of other people. And then finally, there's this breakthrough, and all of a sudden, Boston becomes like the epicenter of success and winning and all these things. And I mean, some of the greatest athletes in their respective sports of all time came through in the last 20 years of Boston sports. I mean, Pedro Martinez, David Ortiz, Tom Brady, Zdeno Chara,
Randy Moss.
Yeah, I mean, even some of the guys that kind of just passed through like that, but there was more like Paul Pierce, guys that were just like, I mean, Boston was always right there. I mean, with basketball, it's always been there. Obviously, you're talking about the most winningest franchise in the history of the National Basketball Association and the Celtics. So they've always been super good. But the Red Sox were such a tormented franchise for so long, and like had a real knack for getting really close and then blowing it somehow, some way. And all of a sudden, you know, I credit Theo Epstein so much for pushing us over, you know, the cusp. That was huge. And then, of course, you know, the success of Brady and Belichick with the Patriots. I mean, what people don't realize is, like, nobody liked the Patriots, even in New England. Like, nobody cared about the Patriots at all. This was one of the few cities in America where you had an NFL franchise, but people still cared way more about baseball. It was really basically just us and St. Louis as cities that had that. And now that St. Louis doesn't have a football team, like, that's not even a relevant comparison anymore. So, but we were part of this dying breed where baseball was bigger than the NFL at a time when the NFL was king across the league, you know, but no one cared about the Patriots. They almost moved to Rhode Island in 2000 or 2001. And that was even under Robert Kraft. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. And everyone's kind of like, whatever. they're still around, you know, but nobody cared about the Patriots in New England. It was all about the Red Sox the whole time. So I think they really got kind of lucky with the COVID factor because they didn't take it on the chin as much from their normal brutal audience because, you know, they have bigger problems right now than pro sports. And at the same time, the Celtics are still hyper relevant. I mean, the Bruins, you know, went into their bubble as the number one seed. And I mean, they fell on their face, but still, I mean, like, those teams are still good. I mean, we're talking about a major market team that has money to spend, an insatiable fan base. Boston will continue to be relevant, but does it feel like a transition? You bet it does. Like, obviously, the biggest one is the Patriots. I mean, you know, number 12 was the quarterback since 2001. I mean, like, it's been a long time since there's been a question mark at quarterback. So that's a big deal. The Sox I like Chaim Bloom as a general manager, the guy who came up through the Tampa Bay system. A guy who was very successful in a small market, and now you give him the big, the big paycheck and the big pocketbook to really spend. Unfortunately, injuries have kind of worked against him. I mean, Chris Sale is brilliant, but he's been hurt. We've had some tough injury situations, but yeah, it does feel like a transition. It wouldn't shock me if Boston goes through a really dark patch for a while. That said, guys like Danny Ainge are working so hard on the Celtics. I mean, you got to love young talents like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And I love Kemba Walker. I'm worried about the knee. I was sad to see Gordon Hayward go, but at the same time, he never quite was the player he was after that. I mean, you get your foot turned 180 degrees around.
Right.
It changes you.
A little bit.
He lost that whole year and the year after. Like you could just tell he didn't want to jump. He didn't want to get in the mix, get his feet tangled in a rebound situation. Like mentally there's an effect from that. But I would say the next championship team out of Boston is probably the Celtics. But at the same time, the West is so tough. You might get lucky, like I believe LeBron's Cavs did a few years ago, that the West had just tired themselves out, going through 7-game series. And then while Cleveland had crushed teams in 4-game sweeps and was healthy, I mean,
yeah,
and LeBron himself is getting older. I mean, but yeah, if I had to put money on it, I would tell you that the Celtics are the next team to win a championship for Boston.
I would have to agree with that. And I give a lot of that to Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens is an amazing coach dealing with the young talent that he has on that roster. And I completely agree. I think Gordon Hayward leaving them is going to be addition by subtraction. Kemba's knee is going to be a concern for a while, but I think he is an upgrade from Kyrie in a lot of ways. And if you can keep Tatum and Brown together for a long time, maybe 2 in the next 5 years. The team that I think honestly has the best chance, if they could stop getting in their own way and maybe add one more key shooter, is Denver. I think the Nuggets have a great chance. They have a really strong core. Health and depth have been issues. We think we have depth, and then we find out that the depth is only good for 2 to 4 games a season. And, I'll be curious to see how they utilize Bol this year and what they're going to do in terms of how he rotates with Jokic. What they're going to do by losing Jeremy Grant really sucks, but he made the right decision for Jeremy Grant. But it'll be interesting to see what that happens. On the football and baseball side of things in Denver, it's a dumpster fire right now. There's conversations that the Bolins are getting ready to sell and that Jeff Bezos is potentially going to buy the Broncos. He's an interesting. Yeah, it just came up like yesterday or the day before. He's interested in buying either us or the Washington name redacteds. And see what happens there. I'd be interested to see what happens with new ownership, if there's someone holding Elway accountable and the front office accountable in Denver. Be interesting. And then the Rockies are the Rockies. We set these expectations that have no business being set for a team that has had, on average, 1.5 good players every year, with a team of guys who tend to overachieve in certain positions at certain times. And, we had one good run in 2007. Thanks for ruining that one.
Maybe.
And then with the Avalanche, I think are the next team that could win a championship in Colorado sooner rather than later. That team is stacked from top to bottom. You add Brendan Saad from Chicago. You add Devin Taves from the Islanders. You get rid of Nikita Zadorov, who for some reason was in Bednar's doghouse. But you add a guy who can put you in the corner and put the puck in the net in Devin Taves. You have Bo Byram, who's coming up potentially this year. There's a lot of good pieces. There's still a lot of question marks because, they're still a really young team. And question marks at goaltending as well for the Avalanche. But it'll be interesting. I'm very curious to see what sports look like at the beginning or end of this year and the beginning of 2021, what we're going to see from the NHL, from the NBA in terms of how they're going to handle this now that we have a vaccine in position to come in for COVID-19. Like, it feels like we have a finish line for that. To turn it back to music, a few, maybe 2 weeks ago, as of the recording of this episode, there was an article that Ticketmaster was going to potentially put into place that they were going to allow concerts to start again under the Ticketmaster moniker if they can verify that you've had a test within 72 hours or had received the COVID-19 vaccine. Then they would send you your ticket 24 hours before the show. I'm interested to see what another musician thinks about this. You're the first one I've talked to since I've heard this news. So what do you think about that in an aspect of like having audiences again that are larger numbers, not playing these kind of interesting, weird social distance shows where everybody's either sitting down or they're just far enough away where it feels like you're kind of yelling at them instead of playing to them?
Well, wow. I hadn't thought about it a whole lot. I mean, I personally have played a handful of shows during the pandemic, but I've been bringing less than 10 people to shows since way before that shit was cool.
Oh, no shit, man.
I've been gathering groups of 7 people my whole career. So,
yeah, but when there's 5 members in a band, 7 equals 35. So you got at least 35 people who are coming. But the drummer always brings that one extra person that nobody wanted to come, who gets a little too rowdy before the show and then passes out before you guys even get on stage.
To tell you the truth, I mean, it's the first I've heard of it. I mean, I missed shows. So there was plans that got abandoned. You and I were going to go see Bayside in Atlanta.
Oh, God, yeah.
Or Nashville before going to Atlanta.
Yeah.
I can't quite remember the terms, but.
We were going to go in Nashville and then go to Atlanta to catch a baseball game.
And, so in that sense, I miss it. But, like, I attend so few shows a year, like, as a fan, that it hasn't been devastating for me. Like, it really hasn't. But at the same time, I'm on the other side of the coin, like, who's, trying to encourage people to come out to shows and come see me play and that kind of thing. That's the first I'd heard that they were talking about, doing large scale concerts again, provided that you could, provide some kind of documentation that you are either okay or have a vaccine. It makes me a little nervous how the speed of the vaccine thing, like I saw a commercial the other day of like, did you take this medicine in 2010? You might be entitled to compensation. And I couldn't help but think, like, in 2030 it's going to be like, did you grow a tail after taking an experimental vaccine in 2020? You might be entitled to compensation.
Right.
I kind of want to, like, personally, I kind of want to, like, have a whole lot of guinea pigs in line before me before I decide if I'm, like, ready to have that shot.
Right.
I'm not, like, an anti-vax guy, but at the same time, I'm like, y'all sure did this pretty quickly.
Right.
Normally, this is like a 5 to 10 year thing. I get it that it was priority 1 every single day of your life for the last 9-10 months, but
yeah.
Still makes me a little nervous. But wow, that's the first I'd thought about it. I guess it's. I worry about the venues. I worry about what the landscape looks like when this is said and done. It's been painful to watch even from a distance places like Hodie's Half Note.
Oh, dude, that one hurt. That one hurt a lot.
Yeah. I hope I'm not. I think I know what I'm talking about. Did Three Kings close too?
Yeah, but Anchors Away ended up buying it, and they're going to reopen it as a place called the HQ. So they are redoing the entire place, and it's going to reopen as a primary venue. So it'll be less of a bar, more of a venue, and they're supposed to be upgrading everything from what I hear. I saw a synth goth show there, which was super cool with Andrew from Red Tide Rising, now Anti-Saint. I got to get that right. They changed their name and I keep backtracking.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Andrew. I know. I apologize. Yeah, we went and saw a show there, which was really cool. But yeah, that did close, but they're reopening once all of this is over.
Well, that's good to hear. I think the bigger problem that is existing in the Denver venue scene happened long before COVID, and that's, you and Tyler touched on it a couple of weeks ago, but it's the big money guys buying up the small venues.
Yeah.
And that is problematic. That is a real issue. Some of these venues were used to be able to keep it local and throw these awesome intimate shows. It's getting very, very, very difficult to do that. And, I worry about that for the local scene there, because the thing that Denver really had going for it when I was there is this unbelievable local scene. The venues, the promoters, the bands. And a lot of people would talk to us about the failures of Novus touring and that kind of thing. And I frequently talked about this on the Long Live Local radio show that I used to host at a Colorado media school, was that Denver's like the worst place you could start geographically for a traveling band. It couldn't be much worse. There's just nothing close to you geographically that makes sense to get your dudes in the van and drive there and try and make a buck. There just isn't.
Everything's 8 hours away.
Yeah. At the height of our powers, Novus Folium would make a phone call to somewhere in like Omaha and be like, we're the best band in Denver, and and we just played with Guns N' Roses, and they'd be like, cool, we'll give you $100 on a pizza. Nobody's ever heard of you. They didn't care. And that's how it was. And it was like, shit, we'll spend $100 on gas getting there. And then, there's 6 of us in the van who can't sleep right. We're not eating right. Like, the whole thing is very, very difficult. It's a young man's game. We went out there in our late 20s and we were like, we're too old for this shit. We're too old to be sleeping in the van. And I can't tip my cap hard enough. I used to give a lot of credit on air to bands like Scarlet Canary, who toured their ass off.
Yeah.
And we're fine driving to Texas for a day to play for an hour and drive home. But to me, that's also bonkers. Why would I would never want to do that.
Right.
That's nuts to me. Denver's an incredibly difficult place. Where else are you going to go? I guess you go 8 hours to Albuquerque, which is also a market that doesn't matter.
Cheyenne, Salt Lake, if you want to go hard.
Right. A bunch of places that also, at the end of the day, aren't relevant. Whereas where I grew up in Massachusetts, let's say that Novus Folium had grown up in my small suburban town in Massachusetts. Okay, well, on a Thursday night, we could have played Worcester, Mass, which had a pretty big market, and on Friday, we could have played Boston. And on Saturday, you could have played at Providence. And on Sunday, you could have played at Hartford. And you never would have drove more than 2 hours for any one of those gigs. Boston's 25 minutes. Worcester's 15 minutes from where I grew up. Hartford was 2 hours, and Providence was 45 minutes. Okay, you want to go to even bigger markets? Okay, cool. New York City is 4.5 hours. Philadelphia's 6. DC's 7. Major markets that are just not available to a band trying to start out of Denver. So the real sexy thing about Denver was that you could be a star in that city, and it was attainable. You could come up from nowhere like Novus Folium did. We didn't have a long history. We didn't know people. We weren't connected. We didn't, we hadn't been around. We just hit it hard and aggressively and blew up, and you could accomplish that in a very short amount of time in Denver. and make a name for yourself and have like a great little local career. And God, if that goes away, it makes me really worry about what is the future of live music in a city like Denver? Because yikes, I mean, like I said, the national aspect really isn't there. And so if you take away the local scene, like, oh man, like, ugh, I don't even like thinking about it, Mike. It's scary to think about.
Well, and that's the crazy thing is like the local scene for our genre is dying, but for like funk, soul, jazz, electronic music, country, blues, there are tons of venues. Like smaller places like Soiled Dove and Dazzle and Jazz at Jack's, which actually just closed. Not Jazz at Jack's, Larimer Lounge. But for us, like for the rock and metal scene, it's like we have the Buffalo Rose still kind of, Herman's Hideaway. Shout out to Chris Thomas for always being there for us.
Love CT.
And Trailside with Zach Beecroft, and Rob at Cheers. Like that's where we are. And like I said with Tyler, there is nothing south of I-25 except for Herman's Hideaway. There are no venues in the Metro South area. You have to, the next closest one that we can play is Black Sheep in Colorado Springs.
Just because it's Black Sheep, probably, yeah.
Yeah, yep. And that's a 45-minute hour drive for people who live in the heart of Denver. And a lot of the musicians in our genre live up north in Arvada, North Glen, in the areas where some of those venues are. And exactly like you were saying, mad props to Scarlet Canary, Hearts of Heroin, and everything that they've done to continue pushing that brand and growing their name and continuing to play those shows. It's not easy playing those venues every couple of weeks and still having the drive and determination to try and make something out of it. And nothing but mad props to them. And other bands that I've been lucky enough to meet over the years, like a band like Stitched Apart or City of the Week.
Yeah.
Bands like those who, I mean, City of the Week just relocated to Phoenix from Minnesota. So they're out there now and starting to rebuild their entire fan base essentially from scratch.
Well, now all of a sudden they're an hour and a half away from Los Angeles and San Diego and Huntington Beach and much more sizable markets. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Whereas being in Minneapolis, you have maybe Milwaukee and South Dakota, but that's nothing.
You're
that's
not terribly far from places like Chicago and things like that, but that's pretty terrible if it's January.
Right.
I mean, it's traveling is tough in those times of year and getting people to come out in general. So
definitely. And then to point out the Worcester, Mass and the Massachusetts and New England sound, I mean, that's what made All That Remains and Shadows Fall and all those bands that came out of that Massachusetts area, Killswitch Engage. Like that.
American Nightmare.
Yeah. They all were, and that's the other thing too, is as a scene, I feel like we have gotten back to, there was a period there where there was a ton of infighting and it felt like we were all trying to be better than everybody. There was a period there where I felt like that was kind of where we were going, but now as a scene, we've really grown back together. I think that it's become more of a build your friend up. Use your friends that you have resources with to help create all of this together. Like Through Bloodshot Eyes was shot by Travis of A Verse to the End. Okay. And Scott Ewell did the lights for all of it. Like called him the day before he left for Cancun with Danielle for his much needed vacation and was like, can you do this on 24 hours notice? And he was like, yeah, man, I'll bring everything I got down. We'll do it. Here's my rate. Let's go. And like, he got on a plane the next morning and flew away to have a break. But, and then with like Van and Travis are working with Tyler Hill on Lions and Crows.
Yeah.
And then, you, Tyler, and I think Brad was in Lost Point for a little while. Like everybody's kind of like worked together to create this really unique consistent scene that has decided to build itself up on itself, as opposed to like tearing each other down and being, you know, against each other and not working to be. It's a cohesive unit again, which is something I'm really happy with. And it's exciting to see as we kind of have to battle through these tough times right now. But I think when we come out of this and we start to be able to book shows again and have crowds again, I will be amazed to watch how together we come and see what happens. What's it like in the Nashville and the Tennessee scene? Like, have you been able to get in any way, or is it just a little too much right now?
Well, when I first got here, you know, one of the first things my wife and I did was go down to Nashville to check it out and see what the scene was like. Now, I'm not a country music guy per se, and I was convinced it was all going to be dudes in cowboy hats and just like full on country. What I was astonished to find that on the main strip, which is the honky-tonk strip in Nashville, is a street called Broadway, and every building is a bar. And it's not just any bar. Like, these bars are 3, 4, 5 stories.
Damn.
So it's not uncommon for there to be a band on the first floor and the third floor and the fifth floor at any given time, all playing live at the same time.
Damn.
You know, and then there is live music at every one of these venues from the moment they open the doors at 11 a.m. until the moment they close them at 2 a.m. And the first couple places we went, you know, I would see this band play, and it was like, this is the greatest band I've ever seen. In my life. Like, this is the best cover band or whatever I've ever seen in my entire life. And then you would leave and go to the next bar, like just next door. And then they would start playing, and it was like, oh, wow, this is the best band I've ever seen. You know, like, everyone is so ridiculously good. And it's all covers on the strip. This is specific to the strip. I have not really explored the Nashville outskirts. This is just the commerce central of
right.
the city. You know, those bands play 3 to 4 hour sets. It's $20 to have your request played immediately. I mean, you can give them any amount of money and ask for a request, and they might get to it in 5 songs. They might not play it at all. You know? But at any point, you can give them $20, and they'll basically stop what they're doing and play your song. And they will play it better than it's ever been played, other than the artist who wrote it. Oh, I got wieners on the move. And they're so good. And it's bonkers. I mean, because the people that are in downtown touristy Nashville aren't from Tennessee. They don't care about the country music as much, you know, as you would think. I was ready for it to be full on dudes with fiddles and it's not. It was astonishing to me how much of an overlap these bands had with what 90% 90s was playing.
Oh, cool.
You know, they're playing regular popular songs from spanning the decades. And yeah, do they maybe throw in, you know, a little more Brooks and Dunn than we would have? Like, yeah, sure.
No, your audience.
That's what they're playing. They're playing Garth Brooks and Dunn and Miranda Lambert and those kind of things. They're sure as hell not playing the modern country. Like, they're not playing Kane Brown songs. I promise you that. Like, they're playing Clint Black songs, and they're playing that era of country. But they're also playing Oasis and Sublime and Nirvana downtown. Like, it's not full on what I was expecting. And I talked to some musicians down there, and a lot of them are playing these big, amazing venues for hundreds of people for free. They're the best musicians I've ever seen, and they're not getting paid. It's just the tips. To the point that every band has songs where the singer doesn't sing and somebody else sings a song or 2 in a row, and the singer physically walks around the bar with a bucket, Mikey.
What?
And they're like, feed us.
Wow.
And I was like blown away because, like, you know, you've seen 90% of the 90s, like, we're fucking around with kazoos and like we halfway know the song, and we wouldn't have even stepped foot in the venue unless there was a guarantee of X amount of $100, you know,
Right.
like, and these guys play circles around anyone you and I know, and they're doing it hoping they get enough tips to make it worthwhile. It was astonishing.
That seems backwards.
It seems terrible. And
Yeah,
I was
that
like,
sounds
oh my
awful.
God, this is bad, guys. This is bad. And so many people were like, oh, you moved to the music capital of the world. How's that going? And I was like, I'm so happy I'm retiring. Like, I don't want to play in this market at all.
No way.
Here, give me 1 second. I'm going to let this animal out.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? Do you mind can you give me like 60 seconds to like
yeah.
feed you?
Yeah, you're good, man. Go for it.
1 second.
His hoodie is really cool though. Yeah. My if you haven't seen over my head, I'll slide this way. There's that's my girlfriend's Marvel poster.
Sweet.
It's like all of the like almost every character.
Yeah, I've seen those where there's like 300 dudes in the picture. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's like 4 Spider-Man in there.
Now you got the multiverse thing, so it's like,
yeah. I just beat the new game, the Miles Morales game.
How is that? I've heard it's unbelievable.
It's really cool, and the story is really interesting. And like if you've played the first one, it feels the same, but it has a little bit more of a flair to it because Miles is a little younger, flashier than Peter. So, but the music's really good. They have a track by Jaden Smith that's actually really good. And then 2 songs by Lecrae, who's a Christian hip hop artist, I think from Brooklyn or Harlem, who I've listened to a couple times, and he's amazing. But the music in the game is really cool. The character designs and the story are fantastic. I'm trying to platinum it, so I'm actually playing the story again to get the new game plus completion. And they tease what the next game is going to be at the end, which I think is really cool. I'm not going to give any spoilers because I know I have some friends who watch the show who want to play it, but I'm excited for it.
So, to try and transition back, so Nashville was wildly intimidating and also like really unappealing in terms of what they were doing and the way they were doing it.
Right.
And so I'd been here for like a month and was like, wow, I'm really done. Like, my career is over. And I was like, well, that's fine. You know, like I'm kind of good. You know, like I've been playing live shows since I was 14. I mean, I'm not even 40 and I'm coming up on a 25-year career.
Yeah.
So like I'm good, but I was actually with Smalls, my buddy who went on all the Jace Ball trip stuff where we traveled around the country and saw the ballparks. I invited him out and I was like, look, man, I'm in this new town. There's, 5 or 6 breweries. Like, why don't you come out and let's go on like a beer tour. So we did. And one of our last stops was this little hole in the wall place that didn't even have a sign called Evil Nash. And it turns out they'd been open for like a month when we got in there. And we were the only people in there. And they had a record player there. All their music was coming from a record player. And they handed me a crate. And they were like, hey, man, how you doing? Want to pick out a record? And just handed me this crate of albums. And I was like, cool. Okay. Yeah, sure. And I'm flipping through and I got like halfway through and was like, oh my God, AFI Art of Drowning. You guys have Art of Drowning on vinyl? That's tits.
That's awesome.
And they were like, yeah, fire it on. And so we put it on. And I was like, man, I love this era and I love punk and that whole thing. And it turns out both of these kids were from Southern California. And the owner was like my age, and the bartender was about the same, and his personal friend, and was living with him. And we started talking about just music in general. And at some point, I said something that made them ask, well, do you play? And I said, yeah, I do, but I'm done. I'm on my way out. and the Nashville thing came up, and I was like, I gotta tell you, man, like it's kind of intimidating and also abysmal. I was like, look, you know, I see these guys playing 4-hour sets of nothing but covers. And yes, they're immaculate at it, but like they're just praying that someone will give them the $20. And even then they're splitting that $20 5 ways, you know, and they're the best musicians I've ever seen. And they're doing all they can to just like break even. I was like, look, man, for me, I don't play covers. I don't take requests. You know, like I play original songs. I was like, 2, they're not that good, and neither am I. 3, I don't do anything without a guarantee. I was like, 4, no one should listen to me play stupid power punk, pop, you know, like power chord rock for longer than an hour ever.
Right.
You know, like these bands play for 4 hours. I wouldn't want to see the Beatles play for 4 hours. That's just too long.
Yeah.
That's way too long. Like, it's just too long. And I went on and was, you know, just griping about the whole thing, basically. And so their response was to book me. You know? They booked me completely sight unseen. Nobody heard a song I played. They had booked their very first band coming up like 2 weeks out, and they were like, yeah, we're just starting to get into it. We booked this band. And I was like, great, what are they playing through? And they were like, I don't know, I guess they play guitars. And I was like, no. What are they playing through? Like what you know, what's the amp what's the PA situation? And they were like, what? Like, didn't know what I was talking about. And I was like, holy shit, when is this show? I'm going to come down. I'm going to bring my PA. I'm going to bring my bag with mics and cables and stuff. Like, let me see, because these poor artists probably have no idea what's about to happen.
Right. Shit.
And so I showed up, and sure enough, like he ended up hiring someone to run the show, but they were kind of a mess too. They set up like, they did have some very fancy wireless mics, and they set them up within like 8 inches of each other. And
no.
Sure why they weren't working and all these things. And I was like, oh God, guys. So I kind of filled in and helped out, and that got me some instant cred with those guys. And then I played my show, and it went great. And since then, I sold them their own little like house PA that's appropriate for acoustic acts, and I've helped bring some bands into that venue, and they've been super receptive about giving me paid gigs at their venue, even though like I have no following here. I don't know anyone in Tennessee, and like it really hasn't caught on per se. Like there's not people that come out to see me play, so they're really doing me a favor. But you know, I come out and I play, and it goes pretty well, and this place is okay with me playing my songs the way I want to play, and I couldn't be happier. Like it's really important for me to have that avenue, because I'm not done. Like I'm not ready to fully be done. You know, I still need this, and I still want this. That might change once my son shows up in a month, but you know, for the time being, like, I still want to play. I still have that urge to get out there and perform, and you know, I'm doing it at a much more relaxed pace. I think last year I played like, I don't know, less than 10 shows maybe. And this year will be about the same, which is, you know, might sound like a lot, but 90% 90s, we were doing some of the math, and for about a 5-year period there, we were averaging around 100 shows a year.
Yeah, you guys were crazy.
And that's with really largely not playing Monday through Thursday. I mean, once in a while we'd get like some weird corporate event or something like that.
Like a wedding.
Tuesday show. But it also wasn't uncommon for us to play Friday night, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon. You know, like it wasn't uncommon for us to play 4 shows in a 60-hour window over the weekend. You know, there were a handful of Saturdays that we played 3 shows. You know, like there were times that we would play Saturday morning at like a 5K race, like a bizarre show, like an outdoor show, and then go play at Threes, like some dive bar hole in the wall in Longmont for like 8 people, and we'd play there for a 3-hour set, and then we'd all go eat and then meet up back in Denver to play Scruffy Murphy's from 9 p.m. until 2 in the morning.
Yep.
It wasn't uncommon for us to have 3 shows in a day. So we did the math, and we're like, I think the year that we actually counted was kind of a slow year, and we had like 86 shows or something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was a dramatic change of pace.
Now I know why Anthony wanted me to come up and sing 2 or 3 songs every once in a while.
Oh my God, yeah.
That makes sense.
You were doing him a favor.
But that's it's always fun to like look back at that stuff and see those things and remember those times and you know, it's crazy to think that, you know, something as small as just a conversation over an AFI vinyl leads to an opportunity to play some shows. I can say with full certainty that when I was in Red Tide and after we wrapped the Seven Dust tour and they were getting ready to go out on another tour with Drowning Pool and Gemini Syndrome and I can't even remember the other band. They apparently weren't that important to me. 9 Electric, that's who it was. That's who it was. I couldn't do that tour because I had a day job. And also I was burnt the fuck out. Like the 2 tours that I did with Red Tide, the amount of work and time and effort that was involved in that band really burned me out. And the business side more so than the performance side really kind of destroyed my love of music. And I didn't want to do it again. And I really just kind of hated it. As horrible as that sounds, I hated it. But then my mom was like, hey man, like you something's like, you don't seem like yourself. I just joined this choir and they're looking for men and they were curious if maybe you would want to join. And I was like, you know, Mom, I'm not really sure if I really want to. And I, you know, kind of was hesitant about it. And so I went and saw them perform and I was like, this is really cool. You know, maybe I'll get into this. This sounds like a great idea. And then I got a call from Travis Owen and he's like, hey man, Trevor left to go to Texas. We don't know when he's coming back. We're in Hearts for Hayden. We know you don't have a project right now. Would you want to join a verse and help us out? And I was like, you know, something's telling me I need to get back into this. And so I was like, you know what, man, I'll come and jam with you guys. If it feels right, I'm in. If it doesn't, I'll help you find somebody else. First practice, and I was like, oh yeah, this is what this feels like. Okay, cool. And then that got me into playing with them. And then I was with Sovereign for a little while, helping out Sean because they needed a new bassist. Jador had me fill in for Buckstein. I played a couple shows with Andrew, and that was fun, man. Those were crazy shows, and I'd never played anything like that before. And then, you know, I got that fire back playing with the choir, playing with Andy Ard, who's in the choir with me. Yep. And so he and I, you know, got to jamming and I started playing bass for the choir as well as singing in it. So that kind of relit the fire. And then Sean starting Gunpowder, we were like, let's do this. Like, this is where I need to be. And my passion's back. My joy is back. Like, I feel like a part of my life is back. So I totally can understand, like, you know, maybe I should retire. Maybe I should take a step back. And then I remember how much fun it is. And I don't take it as seriously anymore. Like, I still invest the money. I still take it as an opportunity to vent that creativity and really push that. But it's not my end all be all, if that makes sense. Like, it's not and Sean, if you're watching this, I apologize if this disappoints you. But it's like, it's the thing I do to help relieve the stress of everyday life. And if it becomes something huge, sweet. But I'm 34 years old and it is not a time for me to be focusing on spending tens of thousands of dollars, quitting my day job and essentially erasing anything other than, you know, just the music to be my only thing. Like, I love it. Gunpowder is the best project I've ever been a part of in my entire career as a musician, because we work together and we're adults, which makes a huge difference because we don't bicker over stupid shit. And we are also comfortable enough with each other to just be like, dude, that riff blows. Like, we're not using that for this. But at the same time, like, I love this podcast. This podcast has kind of become a great opportunity for me to talk to some of my best friends, some of the people I love, like you, and Scott, and getting to know Tyler better. But also getting to talk to like Lindsay Manfredi from Cold. Like, that was my first guest, which was the coolest thing. Ryan Harris of the Denver Broncos. I'm actually tomorrow I'm interviewing Josh Dover.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. He finally got it cleared of his schedule, but local comedians, I'm hoping to get Adam Kate Holland on here soon. I got Ben Roy, who's in Spells, a great punk band out of Denver. He's also he's a New Englander. He's from Maine. But like, it gives me a chance to really get to meet these people and talk to them, and really get to experience cool shit like that. And, you know, sometimes see wiener dogs poke their head up and stare at their dad. Like right now. Oh.
You guys can see my wiener on the internet? I thought I deleted all this.
But I've taken up 2 hours of your time almost. We've been going for a while now, man. This is the point of the show where I give my guests the platform to promote whatever they want. It doesn't matter if it's a pretend OnlyFans like Ted Bundy, or a new single like Whiskey Heart, like our good friend Tyler has out there. Yeah. So the floor is yours, my good man.
Thank you so much, Mike. Again, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that. I could talk to you for another hour and a half. We could go on and on and on. And if that works out, I'd be happy to elaborate on some of these other things. There's so many more stories I want to tell you, because we have such an amazing, like, our 6 degrees of separation is unbelievable. Like, you know, Sean and I overlapped briefly in Gravity Lies. And of course, right. You know, Novus and Wild Angels played shows together, and Lost Point and the people that we know through that, and B-Normous Productions, which is my, you know, the company that I helped found along with Van Verhoeven, who's doing unbelievable work right now with, you know, Lions and Crows and Tyler's thing, Fools to Lie, and some other really impressive projects. There's so much more I could go on and on and on about. But to shamelessly self-promote, I mean, the biggest thing is Campfire 3 is coming out on December 20th. It'll be available on Spotify and all those kind of places. And it's the end of a trilogy. You know, like, when I set out with the band, you know, it's very rare to start a band and say, this is what we're going to do, and then we're going to break up, you know, like on purpose. You know, nobody does that. You know, like, you start a project open-ended, and you just hope you get famous, and like, whatever it takes you, it takes you. You know, it's very unique to say, no. The goal is we're going to do this, and then when it stops, we're done. You know, like, so this is a very odd thing. And I think that's part of probably why I dragged my feet so hard on making this record, because I knew that was the end of it. But the time has come, and at the same time, it will always live on. It will always continue for me, I'm ecstatic about the work we've done. I'm ecstatic about the players that we brought into the live project, which, you know, or the electric project. You know, Sean Prahinsky, Carlos Martin from Your Own Medicine, Beef played drums on the electric stuff. The Beef from Lost Point, you know, Van. I mean, I've been spoiled rotten. You know, twice it happened to me in my career that I got to join a band that I was a fan of before time. You know, like, I was a fan of Novus Folium, and then I got to join. I was a fan of Lost Point, and then I got to join. You know, like, I'm probably the most spoiled rotten, luckiest guy in the history of Denver music. So to all the people out there back in Denver, I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate y'all so much and your support. I hope that you will give my new record a chance. The band is called the Campfire Vandetta. The finale of the trilogy is called the Campfire Vandetta Volume 3. It'll be available December 20th of this year. So very, very shortly here, it will be out. It's incredibly personal, but I think it's still accessible and relatable to, the average person. I think there's something there that you will like, especially if you're a fan of like late 90s pop punk. I mean, that's kind of our shtick, for a long time, I was kind of the pop punk guy in a metal world in Denver is how it felt. And I finally got a chance to really do what I wanted to do. And this is it. This is me. This is me pouring myself on the page more than ever before. It's my style of music. And now with the lyrical content of the third record, it's just my life and who I am more than ever before. I've never been this honest. I've never been this real with the people around me. So I hope it resonates. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. All I can do is tell the truth, and I hope people dig it. And if they don't, that's okay. But like I said, check it out. December 20th of this year, Campfire Vandetta. And I appreciate anyone who stuck it out for. Yeah, this has been like a movie, Mikey. We've been on for the length of time that you watch a movie for.
Yeah, man. And it's gonna be a bear to try and edit this one down because there's so much good shit. I might just release the whole thing. Even the 60-second pee break. There's a conversation I had with my girlfriend while you were away. And dude, we can do this again anytime. Like, I'm always down to have you back on whenever. This is the joy of having my own fucking podcast is I can have whoever I want on as long as they say yes. So we can go back in another episode and talk about our history, like all of the people we know together, the amazing musicians we've had the pleasure of sharing a stage with and play with. Like you and Sean crossed over in Gravity Lies, which was always an interesting, that had a Gravity Lies alone. I should get Nop on to just talk about all of the members of Gravity Lies.
You should talk about the various people that played in the band.
Yes. Shout out to Brian Knopp. Good dude, man. And also, Tyler brought up a great point, and I don't know how we never did this in any band you've ever been in Beef. How did we not call the rhythm section Davey Beef?
I have brought it up to Beef specifically that should be a thing.
Then
you know what, Mikey, I'm calling it right now. We need to shoot a part 2 because I need to tell you my Axl Rose story. The time we played with Axl Rose. I need to tell you about the time that this young upcoming kid begged me to play on a show and ended up becoming a good friend of mine. Kid you might recognize the name of, named Danny Pappas.
Oh, geez.
I need to tell you the story about behind the scenes with Lost Point and what that was like playing with the most talented guitar players in Denver history.
The Hill Brothers are crazy, man.
And I need to tell you about behind the scenes, the work ethic of how a band of a bunch of schlubs from Longmont came out of nowhere and took over Denver in the form of Novus Folium and some of the unbelievable things that went on. So I can't believe we talked this long and didn't get to those things. So
right.
I'm be thrilled to come back at some point so we can finish the conversation because I could go on and on and on. And I hope your listeners are on board to cheer what I said. I got a lot more good stuff to say, but man, thank you so much for having me, man. I really thoroughly appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. It's always a pleasure, Mikey.
Yeah, dude, definitely. And you know what? I'm going to call it right now. Check out for Davey Bartlett Part 2. You're also one of like 5 people on the planet who can get away with calling me Mikey. So you get bonus points for that as well, my friend. Because you've been calling me Mikey since as long as I can remember. And that's always fun. Send my best to the missus, and to the dogs in the house. Congratulations beforehand. Again, my friend, you're going to make a killer dad. I'm so excited to meet Baby B when he arrives in this world and we can travel a little bit more. me and the lady friend will have to come out and come say hi and check out the wonderful world of Tennessee.
You are always welcome at my house, my friend.
Thanks, brother. All right, man. Take care of yourself, Davey, and I'll catch you soon. Peace.
Love you, buddy. Be well.
It almost feels like someone else is living my life. 'Cause it almost feels like someone else